First, the EPA decides to regulate breathing, and now we learn the Department of Interior is planning a land grab so brazen that it's difficult to believe. By misusing the Antiquities Act, the White House is planning to lock up more than 13 million acres of land in 11 western states, including more than 2.5 million in Montana alone, much of which is privately owned. And they can do it without so much as one single public hearing or a vote in Congress. Some of that land belongs to private citizens who have no idea that the federal government is planning to kick them off their ranches. If the government can do this to them, what can it do to you? When policies like cap and trade, government-run health care, and establishment of new federal lands are unpopular, you don't merely bypass Congress or change the rule to ram it through. Americans are sick of secret bureaucratic overreach and Washington, D.C. tricks.
A few words now on what we're witnessing all around the world. Our global political economy is in turmoil. We're witnessing nothing less than worldwide upheaval. In this country, the establishment, political and economic, being challenged louder, more profoundly than at any time since the 60s. A lame duck president with 342 days remaining in office has about him now the air of an infallible emperor, as his undemocratic, authoritarian conduct becomes more menacing, it seems, to our way of life every day, our government, and our future as well. His decrees rival those of a despot, extending the power of the executive beyond any fancy of our founders, abusing his power, issuing fiats, whether on the EPA, the border, illegal immigration or trade, or his nuclear agreements with Iran, a treaty by any other name, refusing to enforce laws in defiance of our Constitution and our national interest, while an acquiescent Congress and Senate look on and do little and nothing that matters. But it does matter what our president is doing. He's in California tonight. He's there taking 1.8 million acres of land and making it, well, national monuments, nationalizing, if you will, these lands. And his action brings the total land and water that this administration has taken unilaterally to approximately 265 million acres, far more than any previous president. He's preparing to do even more in the months that he has remaining in office. One of the areas the Obama administration is likely to take is Nevada's Gold Butte area, where rancher Cliven Bundy and his supporters, you may remember, fought against the overreach of federal authorities and were involved in a weeks-long standoff. Environmental groups are also pressing Obama to take another 2.5 million acres in Malheur County, Oregon, which ranchers there say would eliminate as much as a third to a half of their grazing land now. This is part of the conflict that's centered on one ranching family. One family, the Dwight Hammond family. They believe they've been persecuted so that the federal government can take their ranch and adjoining range. Malheur National Wildlife Refuge is the site of the standoff between ranchers and the federal government that ended this week. And that conflict is hardly over. The president is nationalizing land as no other president has and is intent on taking more. And there seems no stopping him. The citizens of Oregon just watch quietly as the federal government, in another instance of the Obama Justice Department's abuse of power, crushed the rights of two of their fellow citizens, who tonight are in federal prison, Dwight and Steve Hammond. It's enough to make any American sick and ashamed of this administration.
Could I speak to a supervisor? I have an important concern. I'm not bullshit. Could I speak to a supervisor? Sir? Could I speak with a supervisor?
Don't do it, dude. Get back! Please, get back! Get back now! Move it now! Move it! This is it! Move it now!
woman on the ground.
Back up!
The Bundy family says they're willing to put themselves in danger, not just for cattle, but essentially their livelihood. They claim federal rangers are killing their cattle in the process of rounding them up.
There's only one reason why they would have a backhoe and a dump truck up there, and that is because they're cleaning up their mess from killing the animals.
Where's my baby calves?
The rangers here say this is calving season and mother cows are being separated from their babies.
They haven't been able to feed their calves, and that means their calves are starving to death.
The BLM has denied killing any cattle intentionally, only saying that there may be some cases where a cow would need to be euthanized.
Get out of our state! Get out of our state!
The drag marks to this bull.
So they dragged this bull all the way out.
Killed it and drug it.
Yeah, and
there was no sign of that trap, of anything, of this wild, crazy bull.
they drug it out here. Look how far we are from that pond. Who's ever going to find it over here? Right. If they're here for another 6 weeks, those guys, yeah, this bull's going to be nothing but dried up rawhide and bones. Yeah. And nobody's ever going to find it. Yeah. So if you guys hadn't stepped up and come and helped, we never would have known this bull was killed. Wow. Look at him. I mean, he's shot right between the eyes. So that bull was probably just standing there looking at him like, hey, you know, you going to give me some hay or what's up? And then they just shot him right between the eyes. I mean, it's murder as far as I'm concerned. That's what I've been calling it.
And this bull right here, I know this bull. I've spent 14 or 15 years with this particular bull, and he's just dog gentle, just like a puppy dog. Well, just like we went up to those other bulls, and they walked away.
Yards up that hill 2 days before they killed that bull, and I walked up closer than here to that razor and took a picture of him. And this is supposed to be dangerous. And look at that bull. He's just barely coming 3 years old. He's just a baby.
We already drove up about how dangerous those bulls are when we drove up right next to it.
Look at this. This is just a thrill killing. Look at all these shots. They shot him, blew his face open, shot him in the neck, shot him here, shot him underneath on this side, shot him right in the back over there. Who knows how many bullet holes are on the bottom side of him? But there's at least 5 in the top side.
It was just for fun.
Just for fun. This is no... Oh, he's dangerous. Shit.
Did they say he was dangerous?
That's what they said. Look around here. I know you guys aren't cattle guys, but if this bull was fighting, this ground would be torn up. This ground would be torn up all over the place. You can follow his tracks all the way back up here, and with the horses, where he's just walking along.
In other words, the horse tracks are coming.
The horse tracks are coming right behind him.
What do you figure? 2 cowboys? Or?
There was more than that. You can take a picture of that. She's missing her baby.
No, she doesn't have her calf. The federal government, the BLM, took them away.
This tank used to be on the hill right there, and they came and broke the line and rolled it off.
So they're just damaging everything. They just came through.
Was up that hill, and the BLM came and took that tank, water tank, from the cattle and rolled it down the hill. So that cow we saw there, she's just a baby.
They used a torch on that? Oh, yeah.
So this was a previous, which you guys used for watering.
Where did this is an 11,000-gallon water tank that we salvaged out of the Virgin River. Got carried down and got buried in the river, filled with sand, and
you guys salvaged it and brought it up here.
Dug it out, washed all the sand out of it.
What is this?
Brought it over here and painted it up so it wouldn't stand out. Like people want to see the beautiful scenery, you don't want an ugly rusted tank.
Yep.
So we painted it and put.
And they did that with a cutting torch.
So it wouldn't stick out like a sore thumb to people that wanted to see the landscape.
The feds back away from a volatile standoff against a rancher in Nevada after bringing in armed agents backed by helicopters and snipers to seize part of his herd. The showdown attracting hundreds of demonstrators, the Bureau of Land Management finally releasing the livestock. What a scene this was. This battle is not over yet until the cows come home, as they say, but one protester says that they will be there until that happens. Welcome, everybody. Brand new hour starts now of America's Newsroom. Happy Monday to you. I'm Martha McCown.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. The Bureau of Land Management claims that Cliven Bundy is an outlaw, grazing his cattle on an open range without paying fees to the federal government. The BLM agreed to return the cows, citing safety concerns after an armed standoff between federal agents and Bundy supporters. Bundy's family says it's about time.
Those cattle are ours. They're Cliven Bundy's family's cattle. And they stole them from us. And they've realized it. They're our cows. And they get to come home to the place they've lived all their life.
Wow. What a story. William LaJeunesse is live in Bunkerville, Nevada. So, William, this standoff really reached a boiling point over the weekend.
And it did, you know, and the situation began to unravel for the BLM Friday night as hundreds of supporters of Bundy began to arrive from around the West. Protesters, so-called patriots, armed militia, outnumbering the federal agents 4-1 by Saturday morning, forcing the agency to back down. Now, tensions escalated when the BLM refused to release Bundy's cattle. They closed the interstate. Police and SWAT rushed to the scene to prevent the shootout. Both sides, according to witnesses, had their guns pointed at each other. As this picture shows, a protester with his rifle in a sniper position on an overpass above the BLM, guarding the trespass cattle in holding pens below. A former sheriff worried about what was going to happen next.
We were actually strategizing to put all the women up at the front. If they're going to start shooting, it's going to be women that are going to be televised all across the world getting shot by these rogue federal officers.
The standoff lasted about 30 minutes, Martha and Bill, and they were this close to someone pulling a trigger. The BLM made the prudent and safe decision to back down.
Unbelievable. So what's happening there today?
Well, one thing, the Bundys are examining damage to their illegal property that the BLM admits it took down: corrals, fences, water tanks. And someone in Washington is probably saying, what happened? What went wrong? At one point, the BLM is enforcing a court order against a man they consider an outlaw. The next, they're pulling out. And they gave Bundy back every cattle or cow that they spent a week catching in a very expensive operation that was lasted 30 days. Now, roundup by helicopter is fast and effective, but it's considered inhumane now during calving season, when the young ones can't keep up with the herd. They have about 17 orphans, some as young as a week old, separated from their mothers.
With the helicopter roundup, first of all, you're dealing with cattle that are fairly trotty or wild cattle. So these cows are going to be on the run. They've got little baby calves with them that cannot keep up, and it's hot, deserty country. And so what they've created is a lot of orphan calves.
So the takeaway for those who came here to support Bundy, of course, they feel they have a victory and they made a statement in defense of their way of life. The federal government, of course, feels he is still an outlaw and will pursue Bundy through the courts and through the bureaucracy. Martha?
Wow, quite a story, William. Thank you very much.
Well, is the federal government plotting a huge land grab? Republican Utah Congressman Rob Bishop claims that 13 million acres, maybe even more, all throughout the West are at stake. And he says he has documents from the Department of Interior to prove it. Congressman Bishop is kind enough to join us now to talk about this. Great to have you today.
Thanks for being here.
And it's nice to have you in D.C. because you're actually vacationing here this week. So instead of going home, you're with us helping the local tourism industry.
It's a great place to be with you always, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this potential land grab issue. You found out through an internal memo that was within the Department of Interior, initially leaked, missing some pages. You found those missing pages. What about that has you concerned about the federal government trying to get its hands on some land out west?
Well, first of all, we have not received all the documents yet. We received the first set of documents. There's still more that have been promised to us that have not yet come. And what they show is that even though this government already owns 1 out of every 3 acres in America, and disproportionately in the West, they still want to buy more land. They want to control private property around it, and they want to do it even if Congress does not okay it. In fact, the documents were how to go around Congress to implement this kind of plan. What this means for the West particularly is a stopping of our economy, more jobs will be lost. Public education, which requires property tax as well as resource taxes, would be vastly hurt in the West. It's a devastating concept, and especially when the discussion was all about how do we do it even if Congress says no.
All right, so we want to make sure that we include the response that we've gotten from the Department of Interior, their explanation for this. We have a part of that we want to show you. They say the preliminary internal discussion draft, referring to this memo, reflects some brainstorming discussions within BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, but no decisions have been made about which areas, if any, might merit more serious review and consideration. They say they're trying to be wise stewards of the land. Is that a good enough explanation for you?
No, because even though it may be brainstorming sessions, it still tells me what they're planning on doing, and they have implemented those along the way. So there are efforts to try and expand how much money they have. They want to be able, even though we have a $15 million backlog in maintaining the lands we already want, They have already passed some pieces of legislation to give them $1 billion a year to buy more property to expand what we already have. So I have seen elements of what those brainstorming sessions are in bits and pieces as they become coming through, and it still shows the same mindset. They want to cap more land, they want to control more land, they are willing to go after private property, and I'm sorry, this is devastating to the economy of the West.
The purpose of this is to return the resources of this land or this county back to the county, to the citizens of this state, and to this county in particular. And you need to look at this constitutionally. And the federal government has no authority to own and control 1/3 of America's landmass. See, I'm a rancher down there in Mojave County. They control 90% of the land down there. And they have combined all 3 branches of power into one: legislative, executive, and judicial. And none of these people are accountable to us, the citizens there. They're not under the power of recall. And so they violate the letter and the intent of the Constitution by combining all 3 branches of power without representation. See, Harney County used to be the wealthiest county here in the state of Oregon. And now it is the poorest because the resources of Harney County have been seized by the federal government. We're here to allow the citizens of Harney County to reclaim their control of the resources of their county that they might once again farm, ranch from all these ranches. There was more than 100 ranchers out here that have been forced off. Terrorism is when the threat of force is used to create fear. And the people who have been terrorized in this county are the ranchers, the farmers that are threatened with their livelihood, have lost their livelihood. Look at the Hammond family being terrorized. So who is the terrorist? I think it's those that are terrorizing. We're not terrorizing anybody. We're threatening nobody. We mean harm to nobody. We're not being aggressive against anybody. And so you need to ask yourself, who are the terrorists? Nobody's being threatened. Nobody's being harmed. And so for them to try to do something over some rock buildings, that would be completely silly. Sure. I have no intention of pointing a gun at anybody that's not pointing a gun at me. That's completely silly. But let's be friendly, let's be neighborly. Let's treat each other with some respect and some...
Numbers for people here in town?
Yeah, but... Hang on!
Okay, they're shooting.
Hang on!
Okay, we're here.
Go ahead and shoot me!
Jim! Trying to. Stay down, stay down. Stay down. Stay down. Stay down. Damn it. Are they shooting him? Did I shoot him? You assholes. Oh my God! Hold still. Stay down.
Is he dead?
Don't get out.
I'm EMT!
Stop it.
Are you hit?
No, I'm EMT! No, hold on, don't do anything. Hey, no shooting, don't do anything. The door's shut. Where the hell is LaVoy?
I can't see.
Shut up. Stay down, Ryan.
Oh, God!
Ryan, stay down.
A Nevada family says their home's been bombed and strafed by the U.S. government, and now the military is trying to force them off their own land.
The family has owned a mining camp overlooking the secret base at Area 51 for decades. Tonight, they're finally speaking out after keeping their silence for more than 60 years.
The Sheehan family spoke exclusively with the I-Team's Glenn Meek, who brings us their remarkable story.
It may be one of the last great untold stories of the Cold War. It's a tale of what happens when family, history, and national security collide. In what may be the final act of a Cold War drama playing out in the Nevada desert, a family is poised to lose land they have held in this state since Ulysses Grant was president. Here is part of their story and what they say has been decades of abuse at the hands of their own government. By now, most people have probably heard of the secret base hidden in the Nevada desert known as Area 51. But what you may not know is there is a privately owned lead and silver mine overlooking the classified base.
From our great-grandfather to our grandfather, our fathers, they were raised there. They lived there. This was their home.
The Groom Mine has been in the Sheehan family for 130 years. Since government testing started in the mid-1950s, the family has had one of the nation's most closely guarded defense installations literally in their backyard. They have never spoken about it publicly until now.
Well, first, we really didn't want to have to come public, but the Air Force has forced us into it. And we want them to know that what they have done over the last 60 years to our family is not acceptable. These were fired over our property.
The Sheeans say their buildings were strafed and bombed by military planes in the 40s and 50s, and they believe it was an errant bomb or dropped wing tank that blew up their mill in 1954, ending production at the mine.
My grandfather and grandmother, Dan and Martha Sheehan, were destroyed by the actions of this government.
And we have some evidence that they absolutely were the culprits in that, and it was never addressed. They literally ran our grandparents out of money trying to fight them.
They have driven away prospective business partners and told them, if you buy the place or try to operate it, we are going to condemn it, you're going to lose your money.
In recent decades, the government has withdrawn large tracts of land around Area 51 and posted sentries to keep prying eyes off the base.
We've been illegally searched. I was threatened to be arrested on a trip when I was going out one time.
The guard told them that they wouldn't hesitate to shoot them.
They held people at gunpoint. They withdrew 89,000 acres of land, surrounded our property, made us an island.
But 6 years before that, they placed a security shack on the road that our grandfather built for access to our own property and started requiring us to go through their checkpoints.
This map shows the location of the Groom mine in connection with the former nuclear test site, the Nellis Gunnery Range, and Area 51, which today are under the same defense agency umbrella. But these secure areas grew up around the Sheehan's mine, which has been in the family since Ulysses Grant was president.
Now, we're not saying what they're doing is unimportant and doesn't need to be protected. We get it, but we've been there alongside these people since 1955.
Right. And the truth is, as we talked about often, is you can get more view of what's going on that base through Google Earth and pictures that are out there all over the internet that we haven't put out there.
And what we're hoping is that our representatives say enough's enough. They need to step in and they need to fix this.
Now, citing the incompatibility of private land in the middle of defense testing, the Air Force is essentially giving the Sheeans an ultimatum. Accept a $5.2 million buyout for the 400 acres in their possession, or face having the land condemned and taken through eminent domain. The Sheeans find the offer insulting.
I mean, that's really what we're talking about. Is it okay to bomb your citizens, hold them at gunpoint, and then, to add insult to injury, just steal their property?
The Sheeans say the Air Force offer doesn't even cover the value of the minerals in the mine, let alone the family's close connection to the land, where forebears not only toiled, but died.
Either give us our property, leave us alone, or pay us what you owe us.
The Sheeans have until September 10th to accept the offer from the Air Force.
So isn't it ironic that on September 11th, the United States government is going to finish the last act of what can only be described as a criminal act to take our property on September 11th. I just find that ironic. It's sad.
Glenn Meek, 8 News Now.
The Sheeans say they have documents to support their assertions about having buildings shot up or blown up by the Air Force. They want everyone to know they consider themselves patriots and they respect the Air Force, but they believe the Air Force's offer is woefully inadequate. We also reached out to the Air Force for comment, and though a spokesman did not return Glenn's call, the Air Force did issue a press release on Friday saying security and safety issues have made it impossible to continue with civilian ownership of private land in the test area. You can read the full statement on our website. The Sheeans disagree that the Air Force has been reasonable. They plan to fight their cause in Congress, possibly in court, and certainly in the court of public opinion.
48 News at 6. I'm Elizabeth General.
And I'm Mark Thornhill. Only on WFF 48, a Huntsville man fighting City Hall to stand up for the way of life he believes in.
Give people the most liberty and personal freedom that you can afford to give them without infringing on other people's rights. I just don't see how we're hurting anyone by being here.
Now, one local Huntsville man joined the military to fight for our rights, but now he says his own rights are being threatened. The city condemned Tyler Truitt's property. The city filed a lawsuit calling his self-sufficient lifestyle unsafe. Truitt says he's not hurting anyone and deserves to live on the land he owns. WFF 48's Lauren Vale joins us now with his story. Lauren?
Many would call it the American dream, only owning 2 acres of land and living completely independently off of that land. The city says that's a violation of city ordinance, and officials are threatening to arrest Tyler Truitt and his girlfriend Soraya Hamar. The couple says they'd rather be arrested than leave their land. If it's the simple things in life that matter, it perhaps doesn't get any simpler than living off the land.
So we live out here 100% off the grid, self-sustaining.
Tyler Truitt and his girlfriend Soraya have everything they need.
So I've basically made all my own utilities. I got my solar panels, I've got my rainwater collection system and stuff.
Everything, that is, except the support of the city.
They said that our house is a trailer, which they say is not allowed within city limits.
City officials also took issue with Truitt's off-the-grid lifestyle.
And of course they came, they condemned our house, and they told us that if we stayed here, we were going to be arrested for trespassing on our own property. And the reason why was they said that it was unsafe living conditions because we don't have city utilities hooked up.
The former military member says he just wants the freedoms he swore he'd protect.
You know, I took an oath that I would support and defend the Constitution and the freedoms that entails, and I feel like those are really being trampled upon.
Truitt is prepared to fight for his home.
There comes a point where you have to stand up for what you believe in.
No matter the cost.
They could come out here today if they wanted to and, you know, take us to jail for trespassing, if that's what they want to call it. And, you know, that'd be fine with me. You know, I'll still come back the next day and the next day because it's my home and because I live here. So, you know, where else am I supposed to go, really?
What might be counted as one man's war with Big Brother. Dick Thompson says he just wants to be left alone, but a county government now plans to throw him off his land because they say he's breaking the law by living, frankly, too simply. 24-hour News 8's Brad Edwards is on the case in Alexandria in northern Madison County.
Just past a little place that calls itself small, there's a mailbox by an old beater, a story of a man with a frosty relationship with the county. Where is that man? There he is. There's Dick Thompson.
This is Sunshine.
This is Bird.
He likes peppermints. That's Fritzy.
His horse, his miniature horse, his...
Hey, Ace!
Jeez, oh, Pete! Well, got a little close to Ace there. This, his 36 acres, his dump truck, his wagon, and home sweet home.
They're telling me to get out of here. I think it's a bunch of bull. And everybody else does too.
Do you have anywhere to go?
No.
The county attorney tells 24-hour News 8 he's breaking multiple ordinances and health code violations. He's got no electricity, no sewer, no water, been to court a number of times, and now Mr. Thompson has got to go.
November 30th, 2010.
The date. He waited for the sheriff's department to arrive. No water, no sewer, no electricity.
I'm a country boy.
He's got everything, everyone he needs.
Can you tell Fritz you were just trying to do an interview here?
Get out of here, Fritz. Go on. I just want to be left alone.
This, his parents' land he purchased, and now he's living free of trappings. Well, he's just fine, thank you very much, and tired of the court dates and the summonses they make him.
I want to get the hell out of here now. Too much hate.
Where are you going to go?
I have no idea.
Maybe he thinks it is time to give up. To be continued. Brad Edwards, 24-hour News 8.
Now, a county official tells us it's simply not safe and sanitary to live like that. As for when eviction might come, if they can get past the dog, it could be any time.
In a time where government surveillance and online spying are par for the course, it's no surprise that some Americans want to opt for a more private lifestyle, away from the tech-driven habits of modern consumerism. Going off the grid is a growing trend among people who want to limit their carbon footprint and don't want to be indebted to oil, water, and gas companies. And while it's a nearly impossible feat to estimate the exact number of Americans currently living this alternative lifestyle, according to a 2006 study by Home Power magazine, some 180,000 families live off-grid, a figure that has jumped 33% every year for a decade. And you know, it doesn't seem like that would pose much of a threat. After all, thousands of homes supplying their own power puts less strain on the existing power grid. However, we can't have someone living outside the matrix, which is why there is a concerted effort to crack down on this type of sustainable living. which is exactly what happened last year at the Garden of Eden community in Arlington, Texas, which was raided by SWAT officers. And while the community wasn't shut down permanently, the police raid signaled that state opposition to an off-the-grid lifestyle is very real. This has also been the case for Robin Sparonis, a Florida woman who redesigned her house to be fully self-sustaining, collecting rainwater and using solar power to run her appliances. But this didn't sit too well with city officials in Cape Coral, Florida, who took Robin to court, demanding that she be hooked up to the city's electrical and sewer services. What's worse is that the judge in this case, Harold Eskin, recently ruled that Sparonis is, in fact, required by law to hook up to the city's water system. In other words, she was found guilty of not choosing to be dependent on corporations for the basic services she was already providing for herself. Makes perfect sense. But Sparonis is only one of many of these types of cases occurring all over the country. And it's no surprise considering the growing trend of people wanting to escape modern society. In Oregon, 65-year-old Gary Harrington was actually sentenced to 30 days in jail and fined $1,500 for simply collecting rainwater. City officials cited a 1920s law that gave the county full ownership of runoff water, landing him with 9 misdemeanor charges because apparently you need a license to own rain. Here he is standing in front of one of the illegal ponds on his property. And just last year, after refusing to destroy his ponds, Harrington was found in violation of the law yet again for appropriating water without a permit. This landed him yet another jail sentence, only this time it was for 90 days. Listen, instead of cracking down on these people, they should be commended and serve as examples for the rest of us and how we can all live more sustainable and potentially more fruitful lives. Because cooperating with nature might be the last chance we have to save the planet for ourselves. And it's an activity that should never be punished by utility companies that do just the opposite.